Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, joined as always by Brandon Crossland and Joshua Birch. Josh, Brandon, how are things going for each of you?
Good for me. I'm a bit tired, but I've got a bad neck, as we mentioned just before we came on air as well. But fighting through it, and it's nice to talk here once again on the Encore show on a weekend where not much has happened. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's also a pretty busy week with high school football coming up this weekend, but just making our way through it, and it's refreshing to be back on Grid Live Encore once again.
Yeah, well, I guess if there's a good week for us to not have too much going on, Brandon, if you've got a high school football that you're getting ready for, it would be this weekend. Of course, we only have the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series in terms of a series that we cover regularly here on this show. So in light of that, we'll fill some time, as Josh, I know you did last night with the British Touring Car Championship, and thank you again for that. That was excellent. We're going to have a little bit of an open segment here on our show tonight as well. And I want to start with a hot topic. We're setting a record this week, actually. There's 7 countries represented in this upcoming NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen. And so in light of Daniel Kvyat's recent Cup debut and the upcoming starts planned by F1 champion Kimi Raikkonen and 24 Hours of Le Mans winner Mike Rockenfeller, some in the sport are questioning NASCAR's approval process for the Cup Series. Now, this started with a tweet from Fox Sports' Bob Pockrass, letting it be known that Rockenfeller plans to run the Charlotte Roval in the Cup Series later this year with Spire Motorsports. He's now, of course, also on the entry list for Watkins Glen this weekend, in addition to Kimi Raikkonen with Trackhouse Racing in the Project 91 car. Now, a tweet was sent out from Couch Racer Shop, which is operated by Brett Griffin, and I assume most of the time the Twitter account is as well, saying no truck or Xfinity starts needed to start a Cup race. Got it. Now, later on in the thread, a fan pointed out that Jordan Taylor's plans to make his Cup debut were put on hold a couple of years ago. The fan thought the reason was because it was going to be on an oval. Of course, Taylor, coming from sports cars, has a lot more road course experience. But Taylor actually replied and said it was for the Daytona road course. They said I needed a few more Rolex 24s under my belt to get approved. So we'll bring both of you back in here now. And I guess, Josh, we'll go to you first, because I know the European system and the FIA super license system is very strict. There's a very strict ladder. The drivers have to work their way up. Do you think NASCAR needs a more formal ladder for evaluating drivers before their Cup debuts, or should they continue to look at drivers on a case-by-case basis?
I think there's 2 points there as well. The first point is with this Project 91, I can't remember the actual name of it, the project that's bringing other series talents into NASCAR for one-off races. I think we all said as well, it's a great idea to promote both racing in Europe and racing in NASCAR to one another. That's a great idea, and it's a great strategy. But I do agree with you on the basis that there needs to be a process where you're not just throwing drivers in for a race in the Cup Series and then they just disappear again, or they come back in any time they like, where they could disrupt the championship, where they could disrupt people putting in better results of the season. I personally think, a bit like what we have here, they should make starts in trucks or in the Xfinity Series as well, maybe even ARCA, just to see if they're competitive enough and they like the format, they like the tracks that we race on in NASCAR, and then they can go and race at some point later on in the season, or even the season after, in a Cup Series in that Project 91 car. I don't agree with the fact that it seems like what everybody else has to go through, which is to go through, the written permission for the license for NASCAR as well. I've got it up here as well. They have to go apply for the license, fill out 4 different options, make sure you've completed this, and this, ticked off every box. I think for these special one-off races, NASCAR should have a test day where they have that car. You go out. If you are setting a lap time that is inside 7 seconds of the top driver's pole time from that year, then you're allowed to compete in the race. A bit like Formula 1 has the 107% rule, so that we don't have cars in the grid that are too slow and could cause problems. I think it should be the same for NASCAR with these drivers coming in, because what's stopping Mario Andretti getting in a NASCAR now and going out on the track? Because even he said, someone's going to have to stop me one day getting in these cars. And he's too slow. And what's stopping them? Nobody. He could take away a driver, cause an accident. That's the basis. If you let people from different series just hop in the car, you are opening so much floodgate as to drama, contact, crashes, and things like that. You're literally putting yourself in a difficult position because you haven't vetted them properly. I would make them do a test event. I know Raikkonen did one a few days ago at Virginia, as well, International Raceway, and looked quite good. Don't think Kvyat did one. I don't think Rockenfeller's done one either. They've just turned up on the weekend. So I think they definitely need a vetting process, and I think you should start in a junior series first off, and then some point in the year you get it.
I'm going to pull this tweet up here because I think Pockgrass would say, yeah, there you go. Rockenfeller was also at VIR getting in the Action Express car for his driver orientation next-gen test after Kimi Raikkonen is done with his. So Rockenfeller was getting that, but I believe you're correct. I know Kvyat was doing some late model tests at Hickory, so it's not like he was brand new into a stock car straight away. But Brandon, I guess we'll follow up with a follow-up question here. You, of course, can take both parts of this question, but we are talking a couple of ex-F1 drivers, and obviously Kimi is a world champion, and Rockenfeller's won the 24 Hours of Le Mans as well, and you could maybe say there's even a little bit more overlap, not entirely, of course, but between a closed cockpit sports car and a stock car. He's won Le Mans. Should those guys be exempt from needing to make ARCA starts or Truck Series starts and pedaling around there in the lower series when clearly we know what they can do behind the wheel of a race car based on their previous motorsports achievements? Or do you think it should be across the board? Everybody should have to make at least one start in the lower series to prove themselves before we let them into a cup car.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea as a nobody really that F1 drivers and ex-Le Mans drivers can just hop into the cockpit at the cup level and at least on a one-off event and things like that. My mind really goes back to Juan Pablo Montoya just deciding one day, you know what, I'm just going to the Cup Series, and that he did. But I also recall that they also had starts in the Busch Series as well. You think of Dario Franchitti going over to NASCAR. He did things in the Busch Series, the Nationwide Series as well. So it wasn't just Cup efforts that they made, those that transitioned from that world of motorsport to NASCAR. And so there definitely is something to be said about looking at it with a case-by-case basis. But when it comes to F1 drivers and Le Mans drivers, they may have some liberty kind of depending on who they are. I'm still kind of on the fence about it. But Joshua, you do bring up a lot of good points.
Yeah, just on the F1 drivers, they've got to be, I think we can excuse world champions, i.e. Raikkonen. But there's some racing drivers that have raced in F1 who have been absolutely terrible as well. And I think that's something as well that NASCAR shouldn't set the precedent just saying, oh, ex-F1, yeah, you're fine. Andre Lotterer is an ex-F1 driver. He did one race and did one lap of a Grand Prix in Belgium before the Caterham retired in the pit lane. He's technically a Formula One racing driver. Would you let him in the NASCAR because he's an F1 driver? No. We also what Montoya did. We also what Villeneuve has done. Villeneuve is the 1997 world champion, multiple Indy 500 winner. Look what he did in this year. He was tailing around at the back as well, and he was embarrassing himself in the Daytona 500. So I think we need the test. I would still say you need the test. NASCAR need to officially do that as a test, not just the drivers going there of free will to test the cars. NASCAR needs to make it an official test and say, if you are quick enough to this time and you pass our tests, then you can race. Because I can guarantee that the FIA wouldn't let anybody in now. They wouldn't let a NASCAR driver in the F1 car just because they're a NASCAR driver. They would have to pass the tests. They'd have to have the super license points. I think NASCAR should be no different because we've been saying all season that there's such great talent in the Xfinity and in the trucks and the NARCA that are struggling to get seats because their seats and their races get nicked by everyone in the Cup Series going down the order. And now we're seeing people just hopping into the Cup Series that don't deserve to be there half the time. I'm all okay for one-off events, but if it's going to keep happening like this, you need to vet them. You really do. And if you want to come in and make a permanent start that isn't a one-off, like Rockenfeller's doing, where they're coming in at Watkins Glen, then I think if that is more than one event, you need to race in other series as well. You need to have this consistency where you prove yourself to be on this grid, that you're not going to cause a danger, and you're not going to spoil the show, and you're not going to spoil the title hopes, because we've got this ridiculous system, yes, with the playoffs that we've got to qualify for, and that's it. You've got to qualify for the playoffs. It could spoil it, and it's not right. It's definitely not right.
Well, and Brandon, I remember you were bringing up Montoya and Franchitti. Those are guys that were making the transition right when I was just starting to get into the sport, and I remember Montoya running the ARCA race at Talladega and running the Homestead race in 2006 to get approved for the Daytona 500 the following year. And Franchitti as well, Indy 500 winner, IndyCar champion. Even he was running some truck and bush races to get prepared for that. I see our Grid Tonight co-hosts are in the chat room, so we'll catch up on their comments here. Kobe Lambeth saying NASCAR's approval process is very inconsistent, but I think F1 and DTM champions should get a free pass to race a Cup on a road course. The test day is a new rule added this year, and I agree. And I think this goes back to what you were saying as well, Josh. I think there's a big difference between Kimi Raikkonen coming in for a one-off straight into the Cup Series, and I hate to throw him under the bus. Maybe I don't actually, but Nikita Mazepin running the Daytona 500 in a top team car there. I think obviously we can see that there's some differences there, and I think Kimi, not too many people, and if you want to go all the way back, Kimi actually does technically have a couple of NASCAR starts on ovals as well. He did a couple of races in the Truck Series, one in the Truck Series, one in the Xfinity Series in 2011 at Charlotte. So it's not like he has absolutely zero stock car experience throughout his career. Adam saying this race at Watkins Glen is going to be a good one. Completely agree with that. There's a lot of big names in the motorsports world coming in for this race. Kobe adding, it was super disrespectful to tell Jordan Taylor he needed a few more Rolex 24s. How can you say that to a GM factory driver and someone who has won major endurance races around the world? And this is my big issue, I think, when it comes to NASCAR's approval process here. And, I took some heat for this, especially based on what actually happened in the Truck Series race at Talladega last year. But I will still stand by when Jennifer Jo Cobb was supposed to make her Truck Series debut for Rick Ware Racing. I'm not saying that NASCAR should have approved her or shouldn't have denied her, but my argument was there was no precedent to do that when you look at what NASCAR had previously approved for drivers that had less experience. Jennifer Jo Cobb is a veteran in the Truck Series who had a sixth-place finish on a super speedway before, and you want to go back to Talladega, just the previous year's race. I know she was off strategy, obviously, but she ran up front and led a pack of a few backmarker trucks to actually lead 16 laps in that race, I believe. And I think back a couple of years earlier, I think it was, again, don't want to throw him under the bus entirely, but Tanner Berryhill, I think, made his Cup debut with Obica Racing at Phoenix in the playoffs. If we're going to allow that, why are we not allowing somebody that's been in the sport for almost 2 decades in Jennifer Jo Cobb to make her Cup Series debut at Talladega in a Rick Ware racing car, which, but again, don't want to, Rick Ware is somebody that's trying to do the best with what he can, but she's probably not going to be running up at the front of the pack, causing the big one. She's probably going to be, towards the back end of a draft out there logging laps, gaining experience. I didn't see a problem with that based on other things that NASCAR had approved in the past. And then we find out that Jordan Taylor didn't get approved. Again, one thing to talk about doing it on an oval, but you're telling a sports car, multiple race winner, somebody who's a GM factory driver that he's not going to be allowed to race the Daytona road course. I mean, what more experience is he going to get from a couple more Rolex 24s that he doesn't already have? So there's some inconsistencies. I think NASCAR has not approved drivers that they should have approved, and at the same time approved drivers that they probably shouldn't have approved in the past. So I think what we're just looking for is maybe not something as strict as an FIA super license point system, but something that can still give us some clarity on what it takes to earn a Cup Series opportunity in NASCAR. I don't know if you guys have anything else to follow up on that. I've
tracked up that article as well from a year ago. It's got a tweet from Bob as well. He said, Jennifer Jo Cobb not approved to run Cup at I can't remember where it was. Talladega. Yeah. He's just put a Dega as well, which is really hard to read as a quick thing because I immediately wanted to say Daytona. He put NASCAR, the decision based on performance and quality. NASCAR has been more stringent with recent Cup approvals. And she was years ago okayed for Cup, but if didn't run in the series for a year, she must get reapproved. So if that was the case a year ago, on the April 19th, 2021, why isn't that the same thing right now for the 2007 world champion, who hasn't raced in NASCAR since 2011, hasn't raced in anything for now on 10, nearly 11 months. And why on earth are we giving it as well that Danny Kvyat got the free pass as well to come into the series when, if anything, Kvyat had a reputation leaving Formula One as a crasher? Very much unfairly, but he was. How are these people getting okayed for this when we all agree this Project 91 is a great idea, but it needs to be done right? Because I really fear it runs the risk of anybody just turning up because they're ex-F1, they're ex-World Endurance, they're Extreme E driver as well. I can't wait until the start of the Daytona 500 next year and the Project 91 car's got. And now coming in, Robert Doombass as well, ex-F1 driver from 2004, Jordan, and Minardi as well, scored 0 points and had an average finishing position of 20th as well. I mean, why do we put this? Just because they're in the series? I really do not know. And I think they need, like F1 has, you need a structure to get them in. And I think the time, we've got this test day rule come in, as you've been saying, but NASCAR, again, have never made it officially official that they are there doing it all. They just got to run the day, do some laps and make sure your match fits, do a certain amount of kilometers. That's nothing. I could do the kilometers. I could do it. You could do it. Anybody could do it. You've got to get on the time. You need to be fast enough to do it. Not in terms of kilometers, fast enough to do it.
Yeah, see, we'll catch up on the chat here a little bit as well. Adam saying Marcus Ambrose transitioned from supercars in Australia, ran truck series and Xfinity races before moving to the Cup series. And again, supercars, I think you could maybe make the argument, especially on a road course, maybe a little bit more overlap there than coming from fast open wheel Formula One car. Now, Kobe brings up a good point as well. There's been talk, especially after SRX, Elio Castroneves maybe having a deal since he won an SRX race to get in the NASCAR Cup Series car, maybe even for the Daytona 500. So here's a good question that he asked. Should four-time Indy 500 champion Elio Castroneves be allowed to run in next year's Daytona 500 without running the truck, ARCA, or Xfinity races first? Brandon, I guess we'll go to you first on that, and then we'll follow up with Josh here.
I think this is a one-off case here for Elio. Maybe if he runs the Xfinity race on that weekend, see how he does. I mean, it's already a done deal anyway for the Cup ride if they do a one-off like that, but put him in the Xfinity race as well, so he doesn't have to push too hard. Just get some laps in, get some experience, and I think you'd be okay with Cup, at least Daytona one time.
Yeah, I mean, he's got oval experience there as well, which I think is key. And I think that helps him adjust quite quickly. Daytona's a bit higher and it's a bit more higher average speed, isn't it, compared to Indy? It's a bit faster in terms of the average. I think, what was it? We averaged 220. Daytona averages about, well, what used to be, wasn't it 224 at one point as well during the Super era? The same as Talladega.
Well, certainly not with the restrictor plate.
Not the restriction plate, yeah.
In an Indy car, you could probably get up to that, but yeah, I mean, Elio's going to be going similar speeds, but not quite as fast there in the draft.
Yes, there's an exception there because he's run ovals before.
Looks like we may have lost Josh here.
That's a terrible. That's a terrible time to end.
Yeah.
What was I saying?
You're saying yes, because he's won ovals before, and then it cut off.
And pause.
All right. But I'm agreeing. Okay. Yes, he's won ovals before. Yes, he's ran ovals before. He's got that experience. Yes, he should run the Xfinity Series race to give him some mileage. And I stick to my guns that they should do the official test, not in terms of kilometers, but in terms of time. Do some time runs. Are you quick enough? And most important as well, as we know, is crucial with this new generation in NASCAR. Can you draft safely without causing the big one? Because that's what we're seeing. Because Castroneves wouldn't have had experience of this type of drafting. The drafting we used to see in IndyCar always ended up with cars in the fence. I'm remembering Fontana. I'm remembering Pocono as well. So we need to learn that, can you draft with these guys safely out there and not cause a crash? So it bugs me. It's a great idea, this project, but you've got to do it safely and you've got to do it securely and you've got to have bigger names doing it than like we've got right now with Raikkonen and Rockefeller as well, but we don't want drivers who are just there to have a bit of fun, who have got nothing in the championship fight, nothing on a promotional fight, and will likely cause a crash. We don't want that to happen.
And we definitely don't want them making their debut in the championship race for the series.
Yes.
That's something we'd rather not have again.
Yeah. And I think Elio, for somebody like him, if he were serious about running the Daytona 500, there's some races at Talladega that he could enter coming up here in a couple of months. That's a very similar track, very similar environment. Colleague's going to be entering this fourth car for Justin Haley to come back and do a one-off Xfinity race. Why couldn't Chevrolet, Trackhouse, Colleague all work together to maybe get Elio in a fourth Colleague car for the fall Xfinity race and then run the Daytona 500 in the Project 91 car or something like that? I don't think that would be unreasonable. There's still plenty of time to get that deal done. It's similar to what Montoya did with the ARCA race. Of course, the ARCA race is now in the spring, so it's too late for that. It would be wild to see Elio Castroneves in an ARCA race, though. Talk about bringing some attention to that series. But, I think as long as you do some proper testing and can get him into, especially if you get him into a Talladega Xfinity race or truck race or whatever the case may be, I think, a driver of Elio's caliber, it's not like, again, I'm not going to throw him under the bus here because I know he's a rookie, but he has struggled a bit this year. If this were Devlin DeFrancesco or somebody, a lot younger with
out of town
experience, I probably don't just throw him straight in the Daytona 500 there. But Elio, with all of his racing experience and four-time Indy 500 champion, I think as long as we know and can see what we already know, that he is a competent driver and is experienced and will be sensible out there, I don't have much of a problem with that.
For a moment, I was thinking, just put him in the 33 Penske car. I was like, wait, he's not with Penske. My heart still thinks he's with Penske, but that ship has sailed.
Unfortunately, it has. Or maybe fortunately it has, because I think it turned out okay with Meyer Shank, right? He kind of won his fourth Indy 500 with that team, but it was a very special relationship, and it was a shame to see it come to an end, but I think both parties have rebounded from the split a little bit, and Elio's turned out all right.
I've just realised who we should have had on the show tonight. Matthew Owens of USRN as well, who was a massive Helio Castroneves fan as it was going all season long as the dream season. And when Helio won Rolex 24, Matthew was like, he's going to do the fifth. He's going to do the Indy 500 and win it for a fifth time. And he was so excited. So he's a massive fan there. And I would love to, I'm going to ask him actually his comment on this as well as about him running the 500. So somebody in the team who I know is watching, note that down. And I want to get Matthew's opinion on Helio running the 500 for Daytona next year as well. I want to get his opinion on that for next year's pre-show.
Well, before we move on here, I do want to share one thing really quick in the spirit of Kimi Raikkonen making his Cup Series debut this weekend at Watkins Glen. I put a little something out on social media today, and we'll go ahead and play that for you all now.
Hello, everyone. This time I don't know what I'm doing, but let's see what happens. This is my Instagram, so let's see if you want to follow me. Ciao.
I'm sorry, I already shared that before we put it on the show, but I retweeted that as an advertisement to listen tonight.
Well, yes. So I have joined TikTok. That's the big announcement here. Don't expect too much from me because I'm being completely serious. I have no idea what I'm doing there. I think I told you off screen, Brandon. I've had that TikTok idea for over a year now because I remember when Kimi joined Instagram and how big of a deal that was, and he was saying he had no idea what he was doing. So I guess if you're watching this, if you want to give me TikTok ideas, I'm all open to it because I used my one TikTok idea right up on the first one, but I have no clue where else to take that. So if you want to see TikTok content from me, I'm all ears. Give me all the suggestions you want.
I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we will see. All right. Well, Josh, go ahead.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
Good.
Josh.
I'm back. I was lagging. Sorry. I have got TikTok as well. I think there's 2 videos on there maybe. both highlights of crashes from Hamilton as well, and with really poor editing. I think I might delete them and try again. And I always mean like, I'll show behind the scenes of the commentary box. I'll put little videos on of what it's like when we're off air and everything and how we get ready. And I always forget because there's so much on the weekend. I need to hire somebody to do the social media for me because it would be so much easier than doing it myself. I love TikTok, but I do not know how to create it. I can just about do YouTube without any problems.
Yeah, no, it's a very important job. And it's, I still remember my very first day in my first communications class at college. My professor was telling us about all these jobs that didn't exist just even 10 or 15 years ago in the world of communications and managing social media and, TikTok in particular being a very new innovation, even in comparison to like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. It's a skill that, I think is very underappreciated. The people that know how to do it and do it well and get the engagement. It's something that I feel like I'm still trying to learn myself, trying to get settled with my YouTube channel and the tweets that I send out and things like that. But it's a very important job.
Yeah, I think everybody needs. I think it should actually be taught in schools now as well, actually. And I know I was very fortunate. My school did actually do in the ICT, but only because I took it as a GCSE course, ICT. They gave us, they told us create a social media account, so create a Twitter as well. And I created a Twitter account. And they taught us how to use
in the real lag now.
Use the social media. I think that every school should do that. I'm back. Hello. Sorry. Yeah. Am I here? Everyone hear me?
Yeah, it didn't freeze this time. It just lagged. But I think we got.
Oh, okay.
We got what you were saying there, so that's all good.
Yeah. Every school should do a social media course to teach people because social media is so important for promoting yourself and promoting brand, especially as a journalist as well. It is a vital tool, and it needs to be taught and understood as well.
Yeah, I won't forget taking social media tactics in university.
All right, well, Josh, we're going to see you a little bit later on in the show as we close out. In the meantime, Brandon, you and I are going to do a brief recap of our one race this weekend. It was the NASCAR Truck Series, and it was Ty Majeski who looked strong in the first stage, but it was Chandler Smith who ended up being the one who punched his ticket to the round of 8, dominating pretty much everything after the first stage, leading the final 175 laps. So Brandon, with 2 wins in his last 3 races, 3 total on the season, is the 20-year-old KBM driver a legitimate championship favorite at this point?
I think so, Ben. He's really shown why he's in the Truck Series, and he's just really, I think, garnering his stardom as a NASCAR driver and the top 3 series as he's made his way with Kyle Busch Motorsports. And with the new child, this is the first win with Chandler Smith Jr. and the wife. Life is going well for Chandler, and he's giving the glory to the Lord. So it's been nice to see, and it's going to be interesting where he's going to take his time with KBM, and hopefully find himself an Xfinity ride here before too long.
Yeah, I see we have a comment from Kobe here asking if Zane Smith possibly peaked too early here. He did get off to a very good start to the season. He's been a little more quiet, but I think, again, with the way this playoff system is, and we'll get into, the cut line and all of that here in a second, all it's going to take, heck, you've seen it now in the Cup Series with what Kevin Harvick's done the last 2 races. All it takes is one breakthrough win, and maybe that revives the morale at your team shop, and everybody starts, being a little bit more motivated to go out there, get the job done, and you start racking off wins or top 5s, and all of a sudden the conversation can change very quickly. So we saw it was a very good start to the year for Zane Smith. It's been a little bit harder for him to progress or to maintain that level as the season's progressed. Of course, it's very difficult to win every race, which Zane started the season off winning or being in contention to win almost every race, it seemed. But it does seem like his performance has dropped a little bit. We haven't been talking about him as much ourselves on this show, haven't seen as many tweets about him and things like that. But I think there is still time for that team to right the ship and maybe make a late championship run here. And, to follow up on Chandler Smith here as well, Brandon, I completely agree. It's been a great time in his personal life as well, with just recently getting married and having a child. And, obviously the success that he's having in the Truck Series right now, it's kind of hard to believe the kid's only 20 years old and he's already accomplished so much, and I know he's going to continue to accomplish some great things here. He might even cap it off with a Truck Series championship. The way he's been running, KBM has really looked strong this year with every one of their entries, and he's certainly been no exception. I think he could definitely be a championship favorite. I certainly would have him going to my Final Four, but then again, we've seen how chaotic the system is. We know things can change very quickly, so he's going to have to maintain that level of success as we go forward here. Now let's take a look at the cut line. And, again, I know we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, Brandon. It's kind of hard to believe we're already at the point where we have one race to go in the opening round. Of course, the truck playoffs are slated a little bit earlier than the other series are. But when the Truck Series comes back on September 9th, it is a cutoff race. And Matt Crafton currently holds that final spot with Carson Hocevar 3 points back and Christian Eckes 6 back on the outside looking in. So, Brandon, of those three drivers, Crafton, Hocevar, and Eckes, who should be the most concerned as we head into Kansas?
It's really tough to tell, honestly, with this handful of drivers here. Matt Crafton just 3 points above, Hocevar 3 points below, Eckes really only 3 points more. So really, it's not that much of a deficit when we look at it with the ones that are on the bubble. But if we look back to the spring race at Kansas, you got Eckes finishing 5th, Matt Crafton finished 9th, and Hocevar finished 15th. Now, what does this say about what we'll see this weekend? Absolutely nothing, or into September, actually. It shows absolutely nothing, but possibly it shows kind of where they're at as far as their level of knowledge of Kansas Speedway. But really, it seems like with the trucks, at least at Kansas, you've got to qualify well, and you got to have a good spot from the get-go, because the field really does like to spread out there, and a lot of unfortunate wrecks can get you out of places you really worked hard to get. So really, it's a lot of uncertainty going into Kansas. But I'd say based off the spring results, Hocevar, and also being the least experienced driver of the three, might be having the most difficulty. But then again, we really don't know.
Yeah, if you had told me Carson Hocevar would be on the outside looking in, I probably would have been surprised. And you think of how strong he's been in spite of everything that he's had to go through this year. He's done pretty much everything but win a race. But he's certainly been carrying the Nice Motorsports team on his back all season long. If you look past his results and look at the Nice team's results outside of that 42 truck, it certainly hasn't been the season that they would have liked. So I don't know if that's just starting to catch up with Carson a little bit, if he was outperforming his equipment, and now we're starting to see it come back a little bit. Maybe he also peaked a little bit too early. But I look at Matt Crafton, and he hasn't had a top 5 in a really long time. So I think he's kind of been a middle of the pack driver this season, but he's been very consistent. He can get you a top 10 as often as not, but anything beyond that's been a little bit of a stretch for that team. So if Hocevar and Eckes can go out next week and run well, pick up some stage points, obviously if they win the race, they don't have to worry about anything there. But even if they don't, if they just get a top 5 or get a solid finish on top of those stage points, they probably are going to be okay, because Crafton doesn't have much of a buffer. He's going to have to go out and maybe get his first top 5 in a while, or have a strong run in order to keep those guys behind him. So I'm tempted to say Crafton would probably be the one that I think should be most concerned, but this is a guy that won a championship a few years ago without winning a race. So if anybody knows how to get it done in the name of consistency, it's certainly Matt Crafton.
Well, looking back at Carson Hocevar, he's him and Grant Enfinger, they're the only two carrying the Chevy banner into the playoffs, really. And that's amazing to me, how much the manufacturer game has changed in just the past few years in the truck series. You got one lone Ford with Zane Smith, who we think might be peaking too early, and then the rest is just flooded with the red Toyotas. And it's been a big change, especially Matt Crafton was in the Ford camp not too long ago, and switching to Toyota, it's just they all seem to know where the power is, and they want to switch to it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think I've lost track at this point of how many times ThorSport have switched manufacturers, because they've been all the way around the cycle with Chevy and Ford and Toyota, and back to Toyota now. It's just been crazy watching them over the last, you want to talk about Matt Crafton's journey the last 20 years that he's been in the truck series, even a little bit beyond that, most of which has been with the ThorSport team, of course. And, it is interesting to watch the manufacturer battles as well. And I think maybe that speaks to what we've talked about on the show as well. The Toyota teams, or the Toyota racing program, I should say, very good at finding a lot of drivers in the lower series, but again, they only have 6 spots in the Cup Series to use them in when they are able to move up. So a lot of times, you see this with guys like, Todd Gilliland and Harrison Burton, a couple of former KBM drivers who are now with Front Row and the Wood Brothers in the Ford camps, respectively. So, it's going to be interesting, again, to monitor all this Toyota talent and see what they do with it as the years go on.
Yeah, they're kind of setting themselves up for failure there. I know I don't mean to branch off, but I mean, you got all the talent you're raising up in the Toyota family. Once you get to the Cup Series, there's no spot for you. They're going to have to jump ship and leave. So you're training up a lot of good talent for what? If you don't garner more Cup Series teams to switch to Toyota or create new ones, which is also extremely expensive and hard to do.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. You think of all the original Toyota teams, Michael Waltrip Racing, Red Bull, and Bill Davis Racing, they're all long gone now. It's just Gibbs and 2311, and occasionally I guess you see an open team run a Toyota, but of course they don't have factory support, or nearly as much factory support, at least when that happens. So it's definitely a dilemma that they found themselves in, and this has been the case for years now. You think, even just a few years ago, it was Gibbs and Furniture Row, and then Gibbs and Levine Family Racing, and then Gibbs and just a 2311 car. Now they have two cars, but it's been a problem for a while, but they seem to be managing with it, and we'll see again where all that talent goes. But Gibbs and 2311, I think 2311 in particular, they've definitely taken a step forward this year. So again, interesting to watch the manufacturer battles as well in this sport, and we'll see where that heads in the future. Well, Josh, I'm going to bring you back in here as well. We're going to wrap up the show. Of course, it's a little bit of a shorter show tonight with just one series to cover, but Brandon, I'll go to you first. What's your one shining moment? And again, kind of at a disadvantage here because it's just for Truck Series. I'll let you branch out and everything. What's your one shining moment this weekend?
I got to branch out, and it's simply just for the reveal of the Project 91. I'm a fan of liveries. I like seeing the new schemes and things like that, and I like seeing that Trackhouse is taking advantage of the numbers that they have, and they've chosen 91, of course, for Project 91. And it just it brings back some Bill Elliott post-retirement vibes for Evernham. And there's just something about that is satisfying to my 2003, 2004 brain. So the new Project 91 livery reveal, maybe not the driver so much, but the livery reveal is my one shiny moment for this week.
And forgive me for taking the easy way out here, but I'm going to give it to Chandler Smith. I've been very impressed with him really throughout his entire young career here, and he only continues to get better. He's only going to continue to get better from here as well. And like I said, he might have a truck championship by the end of this year to show for it with how strong he's running right now with Kyle Busch Motorsports. Chandler Smith has all sorts of good things going for him right now. I'm going to give him my one shiny moment this weekend.
Well, I did have one shining moment yesterday from the wrap-up show, and that was Stoffel Van Dorn winning the Formula E Championship. But I have thought in the past 24 hours, is there any other? And yes, there was. There's two, actually, from British Touring Car Championship. Colin Turkington, in his 500th race start as well. In the weekend, he got pole position, won won two of the three races, and extending his lead in the championship. That was a great one. But mine's going to go to Jason Plato, who finished second in his 650th start, and it's his last series before retiring. He said in the interview before the race started that he still considers himself fast. He's still up there, and he doesn't want to go, but he says that now is the right time to go. And I almost heard him choking up as well. So it's for Jason Plato, proving that the old guy still got it out there.
And that is going to do it for tonight's show. And thank you all, as always, so much for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube and follow us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok. If you liked what you saw tonight, you can take 5 minutes after our show to invest in our Patreon, help keep us on the air throughout 2022 and beyond. As always, a special thank you to our monthly patrons, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin. Your support means the world to us. It keeps us on the air doing what we love. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy a coffee for your favorite honored talent, whether it's me, Josh, Brandon, or anybody here at Grid Network. And of course, thank you to Edward, Amber, and Zachary, who have already done that. Finally, visit our sponsor, Public.com, a stock market social media home. The referral code on the screen below, GRIDnet, and in the link in the description gives you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Now, on Wednesday, Kobe will bring you Grid Tonight with Adam Lemeries. Joe and Daniel have the Women in Motorsports program, as always, on Thursday. And you can be sure to stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage throughout the rest of the upcoming weekend and throughout the rest of 2022 as well. Josh, Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for the night?
Interesting Project 91. Looking look forward to seeing it at Watkins Glen this weekend, and I'm delighted to see that also returning this weekend is Moto E after a couple months off as well since May, I believe. So it'd be nice to see them back in the action as well for the Electric Bike Championship.
We're finally let down by Tony Stewart's surprise. It's just a dumb NFT thing. So there goes that.
Yeah,
and
that was
yeah. On another note, Watkins Glen, it's just a sign of the times that we're getting into the fall season, and it's usually the wrap up of summer. Always a great race, and really looking forward to being back in New York.
Yeah, Watkins Glen should be a really good one this weekend, of course, with all the star-studded lineups that we've got this weekend. And of course, all eyes are going to be on Kimi Raikkonen. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of international media paying attention to that, so we'll look forward to that this weekend as well. For Joshua Birch and Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.